The Orlando Magic's point guard situation is one of great intrigue and one no one is really talking about. We get to how Markelle Fultz is overlooked and why Cole Anthony is ready for a breakout season, plus the Miles Turner thing that ate up the internet yesterday. All that on today's Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is September 14th, 2023. My voice cracking is Philip Rossman Reich, the host, the site expert at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, and of course the host of Locked On Magic. You can of course find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. As you can tell, I am still a little bit under the weather. I think I'm coming to the end of it though here in just a moment. But before we get into anything going on today, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's podcast is brought to you by something I probably need, Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's Jase, Jase, medical.com. We've done a lot of talking over the last few weeks about the Magic star players. And why wouldn't we? In this league, you go as far as your stars can take you. And whatever optimism that you feel about the Orlando Magic, whatever optimism you feel about this team, probably begins with and maybe ends with Paolo, Banchero, and Franz Wagner. Those two guys are who this team is building around. But obviously, they alone do not make a team. We've put a lot of attention on them. And again, rightfully so, in my opinion. I don't do this. I don't do things without thinking too hard about them. There are a lot of interesting players on this team. And we're going to start getting to a lot of them here as we run up to training camp, as we get closer and closer to training camp. But as some of these NBA player ranking lists come out, and as some of these other lists and questions come out, there is one player who is constantly overlooked. One player who had a really strong season last year. And yet, it just feels like there is a lot of doubt surrounding him. There are a lot of people who don't think he's going to step up in the way that the Magic expect him to step up. I've seen Markelle Fultz listed a couple of these top 100 lists. I've seen him completely ignored. I've seen people say the Magic need a point guard because they don't believe that Markelle Fultz is the team's point guard of the future. I see all this and this and this and this, and it just feels like part of it is just concrete cement of Markelle Fultz busted as a first overall pick, so he must not be that good. And certainly there's a national media that has not seen the growth and the way that Markelle Fultz plays. Markelle Fultz this season, obviously contract year, so you take some things maybe with a grain of salt, but Markelle Fultz has been incredible for the Orlando Magic when he's been healthy. Obviously, he's had a very short period of time healthy. We haven't even really seen him have a fully healthy offseason after the 2019 season, after the 2020 season. Obviously, was cut short by COVID, got hurt 8 games into that season. Last year, he missed training camp because of a toe injury. This year, we are expecting to see what a full, healthy summer for Markelle Fultz looks like. And the potential for him to really build on what was a strong finish to the season. You just take a look at the numbers. Take a look at the numbers of what Fultz did. He averaged a career-high 14 points per game, 5.7 assists per game, shot 51.4% floor and 31% from 3. And while people will scoff at that 3-point percentage, there was certainly a willingness for him to shoot, something that, was certainly a problem for him in Philadelphia and a problem with him because of the thoracic outlet syndrome. After the All-Star break, though, a full year after he returned from his ACL injury, Fultz really started to break out, averaging 15.6 points per game, 6 assists per game, shooting 53.3% from the floor, and even 32.4% from deep. He showed more of the athleticism that we remembered from his days back at Washington. He showed that he is capable of leading this team. And even though some of his numbers there's a lot of questions about some of his numbers, and I'm not going to here to disregard some of those questions. The Magic had a negative net rating with him on the floor overall, but I believe after the All-Star break, it was positive. There's still a lot for him to put together. It still feels like he's a very young player. But with Markelle Fultz, the thing is, he's got to put it all together. And that's the one thing we haven't seen from him in his career. It's been a lot of starts and stops. And so if there are people who are skeptical of Markelle Fultz, if there are people who are unsure that Markelle Fultz can take that next step, can take that leap up, it's because they haven't seen it from him yet. They haven't seen him be that player. And that's, that is the ultimate question now. That is the ultimate question, is whether Fultz can take that step up. Now, you ask Magic fans, they're as excited about Markelle Fultz as any player on this roster. Paolo, Franz, whoever. Markelle Fultz is someone everyone around this franchise, or at least the fans are, really eager to see. They saw a player who regained his bounce, who gained a lot of confidence as a shooter, who showed more flashes of being the number 1 overall pick that he was back in 2018 or 2016, 17, whatever the year was. Fultz, I'm a big believer we shouldn't hold him up to that first overall pick standard. That's not who he is anymore. And that's okay. The Magic don't need first overall pick Markelle Fultz. They need solid point guard Markelle Fultz. They need solid leader Markelle Fultz. And that seems to be the role he is eager to take on for this group. But he's going to play a big part of this team. He is going to, if this Magic team is going to make the postseason, it's going to be Markelle Fultz as probably the 3rd leading scorer. It's going to be Markelle Fultz at around 6-7 assists per game. It's going to be Markelle Fultz being more precise and less, sometimes reckless and wild, and turning the ball over less. It's going to be him maturing and growing into this team's leader, which, in a lot of ways he already is. A lot of people outside of Orlando don't know who Markelle Fultz is. Like, just to be honest, they don't know him. All they remember is the controversies in Philadelphia, the uncertainty of when he would play. That's all they know. The people who've been watching Markelle Fultz know that he's a good player. He's a starting player. And of course, there are bigger questions involved this year. Like, let's be real. There are bigger questions involved this season. There are bigger questions about his contract. How much is he worth with so little time on the court? There are bigger questions. They're just bigger questions are surrounding Markelle Fultz at all times. And those questions do tend to overtake his actual story. Magic fans know this. I probably don't need to tell you guys this, but Markelle Fultz is due to have a huge season. He is due to make a big impact for this Magic team. And by the end of this year, he may not be overlooked much more. We're talking about another point guard who's ready for a breakout season. We'll get to Cole Anthony coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word for our friends over at Jase Medical. Here it comes. There's the banner ad. everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. We are at the peak of hurricane season right now. I know a couple of storms. I don't think they're worrying meteorologists in town very much, but the Atlantic's been active this summer. And so you need to be prepared. And that's why Jase Medical offers the Jase case. The Jase case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you a peace of mind so that you are not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jase Medical makes sure you have the medication in hand. Jase Medical is simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using code LOCKEDON at checkout on jasemedical.com. That's Jase, Jase, medical.com. Promo code LOCKEDON again. That's Jase Medical, Jase. Use promo code LOCKEDON. Before we dive into Cole Anthony, just a quick show announcement. We're going to be having another afternoon episode tomorrow. On tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic, we will talk and show pictures and maybe other goodies if I can get the technology to work from the Orlando Magic's official kickoff of their 35th anniversary season. Tomorrow at the Amway Center, we will get to see the throwback jerseys the Magic are going to wear this year. Long rumored to be the Stars jerseys that the Magic wore during the Tracy McGrady era. We will also get the first peek at the throwback court that the Magic plan to use as well. Don't know which court it will be. I would love for it to be the original 1989 to 96 court. If it's a 1996 to 2001, 2002 court, I'd be okay with that too. That's the court I have to create in NBA 2K, and I create it diligently every year, and every time it accidentally erases itself. I'm obviously a big Magic history nerd, so I'm very, very excited. Ryan Anderson will be there. Rashard Lewis will be there. So we will do an afternoon episode to recap the unveiling of the Magic's 35th anniversary season celebration. We'll get to that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But we've talked a lot on this show. And look, the Magic are going to hide it. The Magic aren't going to say it. If you talk to Jeff Weltman, if you talk to Jamal Mosley, if you talk to anyone in the Magic front office, and I'm sure before media day, they're going to talk to all the players and try and get the message fairly consistent. No one is going to say that this season is about making the playoffs or the postseason or whatever you want to call it. No one is going to say that outright. That's okay. Like literally that's fine. Whatever. No one is going to say that outright. But even me, who I am typically like not for setting like concrete goals, and I like to hedge my bets a little bit so I don't get freezing cold take, because trust me, you can't. Even I will clearly, definitively state the Orlando Magic's goal this year is to make the playoffs or the postseason. The Orlando Magic keep telling us they want to level up. They were the last team eliminated from the postseason last year. There's only one place to level up. And so I will sit here and say the Magic's goal this year should be to make the postseason. They should be playing game 83. That is going to be my buzzword and my messaging is play game 83. I'm not going to promise more than 83, but we want bonus Magic basketball. And if it's in the in-season tournament, let's play game 85 in that case. We'll get to that. Or I guess that'd be game 84 because there's that, whatever. The goal for the Magic is to play game 83. They want to be in the postseason. And so now we have to start thinking about, okay, how do the Magic flip into the postseason? Obviously individual internal growth is a big part of that. Franz Wagner, Paolo, Banchero, they're the stars are going to be part of that. Markelle Fultz is going to be a big part of that if he can match how he finished last season. Just solid play from so many guys. But the one player that I think could really flip the Magic into the postseason or the playoffs is Cole Anthony. Cole Anthony has big ambitions for himself, and that's good. I want players who have ambition for themselves. But he really found his role last year coming off the bench and really seemed to take a huge leap in his game and his efficiency playing off the bench. Last year, he averaged 13 points per game, 3.9 assists per game, but shot a career best 51.6% effective field goal percentage and 57% true shooting percentage, 45.4% from the floor, overall 36.4% from deep. Even though his raw numbers were down because he was playing fewer minutes, he wasn't starting as much, his 18.1 points per 36 minutes were in line with his sophomore year scoring production. In fact, his 13 points per game were 8th among reserve players who played at least 41 games last season. After the All-Star break, Anthony upped his game again. 14.9 points per game, 3.6 assists per game, 5.2 rebounds per game. He's one of the best rebounding guards in the league. He shot 47.1% from the floor and 41.8% from deep. That was a 54% effective field goal percentage, a 58.8% true shooting percentage. His scoring average after the All-Star break was 5th among bench players who played at least 10 games after the All-Star break. And, the Orlando Magic put a lot of their scores in the starting lineup. They break frauds off. They break frauds out of the game early. He plays a lot with the bench unit. They're trying to bolster the scoring. And if Orlando wants to make the playoffs, they're going to need to rely on their depth. And I do think their depth is one of their big strengths this season. I do believe that this is a deep team. This is a talented team. This is a team that can take really important steps forward. And even last year, the Magic were one of the best teams off the bench. Had one of the highest scoring teams with their bench throughout the year. And, some of that is certainly the injuries and Bull had a big part of that in parts of the season, but Cole Anthony was the consistent one. And while I'm sure he wants to be a starter, he said as much. And I think he's going to expect to be paid starter money when he hits free agency next summer, restricted free agency next summer. Cole Anthony can really change this team by embracing that bench role. If he commits himself and sets a goal for himself to be the 6th man of the year, obviously helping your team win helps doing that, and keeps a lot of these efficiency numbers, remains a 38, 39% three-point shooter, averages 14, 15 points per game. That becomes a huge boost for the offense. What's really fun about what the Magic can do is Cole Anthony is a point guard, but they could bring him in, put him in better scoring opportunities as an off guard too, because they have a ball handler in Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs and Anthony Black now, who can set him up, who can drive and kick for him. So he doesn't have to take all the inefficient shots that he took a lot in his first 2 years. Cole Anthony could be due for a major breakout because now it feels like the Magic have perfectly set him up for his role. They perfectly set him up to get more of those quality shots, those high efficiency shots that will help him score effectively. And that's kind of like the theme for the Magic this year, isn't it? That they now have a little bit of depth. They have got multi-positional, versatile players who all seem capable of setting each other up. And the way this team makes the postseason, let's be real. The way this team makes the postseason is the players that they put into roles embrace those roles. That the players that are in their roles thrive in them and help each other thrive in them. And Cole Anthony's role is a simple one. He is there to score. We will judge him on his scoring. Yes, he's a peskier defender than I think people give him credit for. The Magic do a good job covering for that. He is an excellent rebounder. He's a better passer than I think people give him credit for. There's a lot of things that Cole Anthony does well. But his scoring off the bench is a game changer. We saw that with Terrence Ross back in 2019. We certainly saw that with Darren Armstrong in the 2000s. Having a guy who's a starter quality player coming off the bench is a big boost. And if you look at what's the difference between what could be the difference between the Magic and a lot of the other teams that are vying for postseason, who have postseason potential in the Eastern Conference, depth is a big part of it. Depth is a huge swing factor. And so having a capable and quality scorer like Cole Anthony off the bench, a potential floor spacer off the bench, that is a huge boost to this Orlando Magic team. And we'll see just how much of a boost he can provide in the coming weeks. We're going to close today's show by talking about the thing that flooded my inbox all day long and how stupid it really is. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season has begun. Thursday Night Football tonight. And so get in on the season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Before we dive into our final topic of the day, next week we will start player outlooks. We'll dive deeper into individual players as the countdown to training camp continues. Only 2 weeks to go. So we'll talk about Chet Howard, Mo Wagner, plenty more. As we get them done on Orlando Magic Daily. Player Outlook Week begins next week here on Locked On Magic. But we got to take a detour from the current season and talk about history. Talk a little bit about something that happened in the past that Magic fans certainly regret. On the Run Your Own Race podcast from Title League. Great. I love Title League, by the way. They have some great podcasts there. Miles Turner told the story of how shocked he was that the Magic passed on him to draft Mario Hezonja. The video clip and certainly the headlines around it were much more salacious, I think, than what Miles Turner actually said. Miles Turner made a lot of really good points that it is, he thought he was going to go number 5 to Orlando. He was shocked. He didn't know who Mario Hezonja was, just saw him as a random European. And that part was a little cringy, but Miles Turner made a really interesting point saying, like, look, I'm really, really happy I ended up in Indiana. I don't think I would have developed as well in Miami, yada, yada, all that stuff. And look, I'm a big believer that situation matters for rookies as much as anything else. You need to come into an environment that can develop you, that can put you in the right role, that can, give you accountability. And, I sat there listening to what Miles Turner had to say, and I thought 2 things. First off, yes, the Magic made a mistake drafting Mario Hezonja. We can look at that with 2020 history and clearly see Mario Hezonja did not develop into the player that everyone thought he would be. Some of that was organizational instability. Scott Skiles was just brought in as the head coach. He was not the right coach for Mario Hezonja, although Mario has said the change from Scott Skiles to Frank Vogel probably derailed his career as much as anything. He was really starting to figure things out with Skiles, and Skiles just didn't vibe with that team. That team was too young for him. He wasn't that season, for as good as that season was for the first 3 months, was a complete disaster. Let's leave it at that. And obviously the Magic were about to make some major changes. I will note, however, I went back into my archives. The Magic got largely passing grades. In fact, they got A's for drafting Mario Hezonja. So I don't blame the Magic for drafting Mario Hezonja. They needed shooting. Mario Hezonja was one of the best shooters in the draft. They needed a star. Mario Hezonja certainly had star potential. It obviously didn't click. Hezonja was a little too immature, maybe a little bit too much bravado. It didn't work. I'm sure Mario could look back. He's had a very successful career in Europe now with I think he's with Real Madrid. He could look back and probably point to I did not handle my NBA experience particularly well. And honestly, like the way he's played, it would not surprise me if he gets back on NBA radar soon if he wants that. Miles Turner, though, was not on the Magic's radar. I don't know who told Miles Turner that he was up for the 5th pick. My mock draft, I had him going 10. I think most mock drafts had him going in the back end of the top 10, if not into the late lottery. I don't think anyone had him at number 5. In fact, if I remember correctly, the Magic were really, the Magic wanted Kristaps Porzingis, and that didn't happen. the Magic really wanted the Magic. I think we're picking between Hazonia and Justice Winslow, and obviously the great mistake of that 2018 draft or 2015 draft was Devin Booker. Magic fans know the story. Devin Booker grew up in Saginaw, in Michigan. I think it was Saginaw, Michigan. Maybe I have that wrong. Grew up in Michigan, was friendly with people around the DeVos family, was pushing the DeVos family to take him. Just nobody believed he was a top 5 pick. Obviously, he has proven all those people wrong, and that's going to be one of the great sliding doors in Magic history is if they bought in with Devin Booker and bought in on him early. Because he's the kind of player, the situation can be bad like it was at Phoenix, and he still thrives, and he's still really good. And obviously, Devin Booker's one of the best players in the league right now and probably going to save Team USA next year. I didn't really want to comment on this beyond to say that, like, look, every team has a sliding doors draft. Every team makes draft mistakes. And look, Rob Hennigan made a lot of draft mistakes. He brought in players who are talented, like Tobias Harris, Aaron Gordon are competing for championship teams. Victor Oladipo was an all-star. Nikola Vucevic turned into an all-star after he left. Evan Fournier was a solid player for the Magic for a long time. I never thought Rob Hennigan was bad at evaluating talent. He was bad at building the infrastructure to help that talent succeed. And if you're looking for a difference between Rob Hennigan and Jeff Weltman, and I saw some of the comments on the Miles Turner thing, and they're like, the problem, Miles Turner, the problem when Mario is the Magic. And just listen to all the draft picks that have struggled to kind of find their way with the Magic. And, I can't argue against it. Rob Hennigan did not build a solid foundational culture. Jeff Weltman has missed on some draft picks. I'm not going to sit here and deny that. His drafts have been, for a market like Orlando, you've got to be a good drafting team. And frankly, Orlando has not been a good drafting team at any point in their franchise history. Nick Anderson was a solid pick. Shaq was an easy pick. The Penny trade was brilliant. Dwight was a tough choice and the right pick. Paolo looks like the right pick. Franz looks like a really good pick. There's been a lot of inconsistency in between. And at moments when the Magic needed draft picks to supplement their roster, they really struggled to find guys that could even play. You think about the T-Mac era, the 2000s, Gerald Sasser, Stephen Hunter, Ryan Humphrey. Outside of Mike Miller, the Magic did not draft very well. And that's what cost them Tracy McGrady, to be perfectly honest. When you didn't have Grant Hill, you needed draft pick. That put more pressure on the draft picks to be correct. The Magic I think the Magic have a better organizational culture and better organizational infrastructure to help young players grow. I think that's why Franz Wagner's been really good. I think that's why Jalen Suggs has really started to turn a corner and figure things out. Cole Anthony seems to have worked out really well, as we talked about. A lot of young guys seem to be getting better with the Orlando Magic. And obviously, the team is getting better. But I don't think about these sliding doors. Like, would the Magic have been better with Miles Turner over Mario Hezonja? Absolutely. Would Miles Turner have found a place with the Magic? I think his defense would have clicked with Scott Skiles. But I remembered this, and I went back into my archives and saw what I wrote about Miles Turner in the run-up to the draft. My criticism of Miles Turner when I watched him at Texas was that he floated on the perimeter too much, that he was too much of a three-point shooter. And obviously at that time, you still wanted centers who could man the paint a little bit. That's kind of been his weakness in the NBA. He's a great defender, one of the best defenders in the league. But his offense has always been inconsistent. And even though he's been with Indiana now for a very long time, it always feels like he's in the middle of trade rumors. So would Miles Turner have worked out in Orlando? I think he would have had a better chance clicking with Scott Skiles. Would he have sped up decisions on Nikola Vucevic? Like, look, the Magic traded for Serge Ibaka and signed Bismack Biyombo a year later. They clearly weren't completely bought in on Nikola Vucevic at that point. I don't know. I don't know. It probably would have worked out better than Mario did, as much as I like Mario as a person and that and all that. But I understand the logic of why the Magic drafted the way they did. They needed shooting. They didn't know really what they had in Evan Fournier. Victor Oladipo was set to become a free agent soon. They didn't really know what they were doing with him yet. That Magic team just had no direction. They had no organizational philosophy or team building philosophy. They just had a bunch of players. And as I think Victor Oladipo said after he left the Magic a year later, too many guys were competing with each other for minutes, for attention, for the basketball, for stats, for contracts. it didn't work. We all know it didn't work. We saw it didn't work on the court. Would Miles Turner have helped? Probably. Would he have worked out? Would he become what he's become? I don't know. That I don't know. As much as Miles Turner hated the idea of playing in Miami, this is the difference between Miami and everyone else. If you're a hardworking player, if you're a Heat guy, you work out. I mean, even Justice Winslow, who the Heat ended up drafting 10th in that draft, ended up working out a little bit. Had his best years with the Heat before he was traded to Memphis and kind of fell off the face of the earth. It's tough. And that's why I don't like doing sliding doors. You don't know. You work with what you have. You don't think about what could have been, because if you get caught thinking about what could have been, then you start analyzing guys based on your imagination rather than as they are. Miles Turner's a really good player. It worked out for him in Indiana. I'm happy for him. And obviously the Magic suffered for making a bad pick with Mario Hezonja. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all for sticking with me as I'm dealing with a little bit of an illness. I think I'm coming on the other end of it here. But I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You can, of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast and Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google, Spotify, Odyssey, and all of our places to podcast to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can, of course, follow me there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. Like I said, for my everyday crew, we'll be back tomorrow to chat about the Orlando Magic launching their 35th anniversary season, the new jerseys, the new court, and everything to get you hyped for the Orlando Magic's 35th anniversary season. We'll get to that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.